Good evening. I'm Dr. William Wright, and this is another episode of The Wright Experience. I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. I'm Dr. William T. Wright, Jr., the founder and host of this show. Over the past 23 years or so as a professional educator, I've been fortunate enough to meet some outstanding and amazing people. During that time, I've learned that we have some of the best leaders there are to offer in education in the Eastern United States. Tonight is no exception. I have an outstanding leader here with us tonight. Our initial focus of this show will be on educational leaders. As time goes on, we will look at leaders in other disciplines. Tonight is episode 2 of The Wright Experience. And tonight I have Dr. Mary L. Young. Dr. Mary L. Young was born in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. She is the oldest child of Benjamin and the late Louise Elliott Sr. She is the wife of Timothy K. Young Sr. I've been married 28 years. She's the mother of 3 sons, Timothy Jr., Nigel, and Gabriel, 26, 23, and 15 years of age, respectively. Dr. Young began her tenure as Superintendent of Warren County Schools in North Carolina, July of 2019. Dr. Young has enjoyed a successful career in public education for more than 25 plus years. She is a proven leader. She served with Prince George's County Public Schools in Maryland as an executive director in the Office of Employee Performance and Evaluation and as an instructional supervisor. In addition, Dr. Young worked with the South Carolina Department of Education as an education associate and program director. She's also served as a principal in several schools in Washington, D.C. Dr. Young's steadfast goal has always been to provide all students, regardless of their learning needs, race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status, with options and choices upon graduation. Through her experience in education, Dr. Young has developed a keen sense of effective leadership practices. She has had the opportunity to participate in the Harvard University School Turnaround Leaders Institute, Harvard University's Urban School Leadership Center for Creative Leadership Institute, and the New Leaders, DC School Leaders Network. In addition, she is a principal assessor for the National Association of Secondary Principals and Secondary Certified Gallup Strengths Finders Coach. Most recently, she also graduated from the esteemed AASA Urban Superintendents Academy. I think I was there when that happened. She served as an adjunct professor at Trinity University, the University of Phoenix, and consultant for the DC Public Charter School Board and the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. In addition, she's held positions on the Board of Directors for Strategies to Empower People, called STEP, and the DC Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, ASCD. Dr. Young holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in interdisciplinary studies from the University of South Carolina, a Master's of Education in Reading from Howard University, and a doctorate in Educational Administration and Policy from Howard University. And most recently, we'll talk about this tonight, Dr. Young is also co-authoring a book entitled Women Who Lead in Education, featuring school superintendents. And that's going to be published later on this year by Perfect Time SHP LLC book publishing firm. Scheduled to come out May 21st on Amazon. And at this time, I'd like to welcome aboard Dr. Mary Young. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. As you were reading the bio, at one moment I said, who is that he's talking about?
It's all about you, Dr. Young.
But it's a pleasure and an honor. I appreciate you at least providing me the opportunity.
Career you've had thus far, and certainly we're honored to have you tonight on the show. And as we get into this show, we certainly appreciate the fact that you've taken the time out to be a part of the Wright Experience, and you're helping us make history tonight. This is episode 2 for the show, and you are also our first female leader on the show tonight. So certainly we welcome you here, and we're glad that you're a part of what's going on.
Thank you.
So let's get right into the questions. We'll have some good time to talk here. So talk to us a little bit about your current role as superintendent of Warren County Schools and some of the wonderful things that are currently going on in that school district.
Yes, definitely. And so I'm the proud superintendent of Warren County Schools, which is in Warrenton, North Carolina. It's in the Northeast region of the state of North Carolina. And just some of the things that I would just say that I'm just really proud about are just some of the things that we've done. Success, even in the midst of COVID, I will say, we were able to have a one-to-one Google Chromebook distribution. We distributed over 800 hotspots for our families. And, but the bottom line for me was being able to say that we were able to provide a quality education for all of our students, being able to reach our students. As many other school districts have lost students in the midst of COVID, this year, for the first time in 20 years, Warren County didn't lose any students. And so we know where all of our students are. And so we're just excited for just the opportunity to make sure that we're providing a well-rounded education for our students.
All right. And it's been a struggle, but we've persevered through it. In my district, we call that progress in a pandemic. So
yes.
And I know you all have had that too. So what are some signature moments that you've had as a leader throughout your career?
I have several moments, if it's all right, because for me, there is no one particular moment that I can say that is like a pinnacle moment, because one, I will say that I do believe that the work that I do as an educator is a calling. And so for me, I take pleasure in knowing that I'm able to pour into the lives and build others. So even when I was a principal, walking into a school where at the time it was a high school where we had students who had been in the ninth grade for the past 4 years, and being able to work with students and increase the passing rate from like 35% to 85% within a year. Some of the other things we did when we looked at the math courses, we increased their passing rate from 26 to 70%, even tripling the number of students that had made honor roll. And then when I think about having been an executive director in Prince George's County, one of my proudest moments was we were a recipient of a $25 million teacher and school leader incentive program from the U.S. Department of Education. And so for me, that was exciting because, I'd never seen $25 million in relation to a grant. Particularly, it may have been a budget, but not a grant. And so that was something that I was just really extremely, proud of that, we had done as a team. And then even now, just even as a superintendent within my first year, one of the things that I will say, there were some financial challenges coming in as it relates to, a negative fund balance and some other, financial challenges based upon the numbers of enrollment going down. And so one of the things that I was able to quickly do with my chief financial officer was to, do an assessment analysis of the finances. And we were able to save $1.8 million in local funds last year. Just something that I will say, the other thing is just even as a district, having been a former reading specialist and coming in and knowing that the district hadn't had textbooks in the past 10 years. And so being able to find the money to be able to buy textbooks K-12 for all of our students. And there are just so many other things, that I would say that, I'm just, proud of even, and I'll just, coming in and knowing that, when we looked at our North Carolina state audit scores, we increased in human resources, we increased in our sectional children, we increased in our transportation and our finance audit. And so for me, it was just an opportunity to be able to say, what can I do to make sure that I'm able to leave where I was better than when I came. And so I'm just so excited of just the opportunity of being able to have had the interactions that I've had and just being able to work with people with and through. And that's a part of leadership, being able to work with and through people to accomplish a task.
And I'm sure you drew upon your experiences and folks that you led with and learned from and so forth, and done just a tremendous job. We read about the wonderful things that are going on and hear about in Warren County all the time, and so
Thank you.
I'm certainly proud of your leadership, and I know that they appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the people that you have worked with over the years or learned from that you consider to be some of your mentors, or some people that you've looked up to in leadership. Who are they?
Yes, yes. I have a number of them. Many of them, if not all of them, are not from North Carolina, but I still want to, give them an opportunity to know that I so much appreciate them. One in particular is Mr. Ralph Neal. He's my former principal. And so, and he was a retired assistant superintendent in the District of Columbia Public Schools. He was someone who, when I was sitting, being a reading specialist, saying, this is all I want to do, he took the time to, recognize me and to pour into me and say, you have leadership skills and qualities, and what can we do to grow it? Some of the other people that I will say is, her name is Dr. Beth Copenhagen. She was a former assistant superintendent, and she was at the South Carolina Department of Education. And I remember one day she and I were talking, and she just said, you know what? You look like a superintendent. And it was almost like when she said that, it was like something that her words stuck to my soul, if that's a great description. And from that point on, it was one of those, and we're talking about 2013 when she said it. And so for me, it was a matter of saying from that point, and I became a superintendent in 2019. So years later, I became a superintendent, but what she said just stuck to me. And it was almost like, a seed was planted, and I was able to just think about, wow, that is something that I, desire. And I know time is of the essence. Dr. Valerie Truesdale, she's a former superintendent of Beaufort County Schools in Hilton Head, the
Know that
Hilton Head,
name.
South
Yeah,
Carolina
yeah.
area. And she's also the um, assistant executive director for the the School Superintendent Association. Dr. Kevin Maxwell, he's a former superintendent of Prince George's County. He was the one that he and Dr. Truesdale helped prep me for my interview in Warren County Schools. Dr. Gregory Hutchins, he's a current superintendent of Alexandria City Public Schools. He's been an ear for me. I'll say you, although you may not think of yourself as, but being able to have you there as an ear for me to be able to bounce things off. Dr. Sam King, who's a retired superintendent and lead superintendent educator for AASA. And of course, Dr. Anthony Jackson, he's my assigned mentor through the North Carolina Superintendents Association. And he's a superintendent of Vance County Public Schools. But I've just had so many people that have poured into me. And for me, like I said, I just consider it an honor and a privilege, because without them and their experiences and what they've been able to provide to me, I know I wouldn't be the leader that I am today.
Awesome. And thanks for the shameless plug and shout out. And also, we do have some listeners, hopefully in the DMV area. So certainly
Yes.
that's appropriate. And what a great list. Some of those folks I
Yes.
certainly have heard of in my time in South Carolina and other places. So
Yes.
what a great list. What a great list.
You answer my calls. You're my mentor.
That's it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I've learned something about you. I've learned that you are co-authoring a book.
Yes.
What an outstanding thing. So talk to us a little bit about it and some of the topics, and just talk to us about what the book is about and what you hope to cover and show us as a nation about the book.
Yes. And so I was honored to be approached by Dr. Sharon Porter Hodges. And she is the founder or co-founder of the publishing company. And I am one of, if I'm not mistaken, about 10 to 15 other superintendents across the United States, between North Carolina to Maryland to Ohio. There are a number of female superintendents, although the number of female superintendents is small compared to superintendents across the United States. The goal was to really provide a space for female superintendents to be able to share our journey with others who are aspiring superintendents, and then also those that, are current superintendents. And so some of the things that I'll be discussing will be, my journey in education, how I got started, because just because you're a superintendent, everyone has a different path. And so it allows other people to know, there's more than one way to get to the position of superintendents. I'll be able to talk about also some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I've learned a lot of lessons. And so, the one thing that I, sometimes say to people that people may not really realize, but, it has not been, every day has not been a high day or an A+ day, if you can say it like that. I've had some pits, I've had some valley experiences, but those valley experiences have also provided me an opportunity to learn. And as Maxwell says, learn forward and failing forward, and being able to know that through those experiences, it's made me a better person. I'll be talking about some of my obstacles and challenges and barriers that I faced as a leader. Particularly, I will just, point out, although you're going to have to read the book, one thing that I will say is many times people look at female leaders differently than they look at male leaders. And then the other thing is people sometimes look at female African American leaders different than they look at other leaders. And so a part of it is to say, these are some of the experiences, these are some of the potential challenges, obstacles that you may face, but even within that, you can still accomplish your goal of being a successful leader. And so for me, I'll be talking about some of my accomplishments and just things that I'd like to provide to aspiring superintendents. And so a lot of different things that, I'll be providing, but I'm just excited about being able to just share my journey and my experiences, because it's just unique to me and everyone has their own path. And so I'm excited to be able to share that.
And May of 21 is the projected date. Is that right for the release?
Yes, sir. May
I can't wait. That's going to be some
on
awesome
Amazon.
summer reading for us, for sure.
Thank
So
you.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And maybe we can get you back on the show around the time of this release, so you can hold it up and tell us about it again and all of that.
Yes,
so that's outstanding.
Thank you.
So everybody is asking us and talking to us. You've heard the conversations. We hear them every day now about this whole COVID-19 pandemic and how we're faring and what we're doing and so forth. So talk to us a little bit about how you and your school district have navigated the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and still trying to provide learning opportunities for students.
Yes. So one of the things that I will say is, when I think about some of the things that we've done, one major piece was making sure that we stayed abreast of the ongoing research to ensure that everyone was safe. And so, you, of course, being a superintendent, there would be biweekly calls that we would have with the North Carolina, Department of Health and Human Services. We would have our superintendents meetings. We would also have our local Central Carolina CC RISA meetings with the other superintendents. And so a part of it was an opportunity, one, for us to be able to hear what was going on, and then also for us to be able to share best practices and ask questions. So that was one piece that has really, assisted. Some of the other things that, when we talk about just navigating, is just really thinking in terms of, as we move forward, thinking in terms of, we don't want to return to school as normal. As some people say, do you really want to return to school doing school the old way that we used to do it? And so for me, a part of it is just thinking in terms of, what are those takeaway things that we've been able to learn and glean, that we've had to think out of the box and be innovative? It's almost like COVID forced us to think out of the box. And what I'm hoping is that now returning to school, we don't return to the box. And so for me, it's about being able to say, how can we still think about cutting edge opportunities to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students. And so for me, it's about being able to say, what are some of the various modes that our students are learning, and how can we meet our students where they are? And then the other thing that, that has just been something that I've noticed when we talk about just the whole piece of equity is really ensuring that we focus on opportunity gaps for our students. Because if in the absence of opportunity gap, it leads to achievement gap. And so for me, I go back to having been a reading specialist. One of the biggest I would say, areas that hinders a student's ability to understand what they read is exposure, comprehension. And so it's hard to be able to read something and really not have an understanding, and sometimes not even be able to relate to it. And so for me, that speaks to opportunity. It speaks to exposure. And so for me, one of the things that I will say that it's really pushed our teachers to do is they've had virtual field trips. Just this past week, at our Warren County New Tech High School, we had one of our international teachers. They formed a partnership between schools where we were able to have a cross-cultural program, and our students and the principals from both schools and the teachers and myself, we were able to have a cultural exchange opportunity where students were able to share their cultures with each other. And that was something that some people may take for granted and say, well, that's something you could have done. And it's possible, but it was something that evolved out of the need to want to make sure that we were able to be connected to other cultures and other experiences. And it was something that had not happened. And as a result, we will continue that partnership, even to the point of the possibility of seeing if maybe some of our students could visit Jamaica and live in the homes of those students and vice versa. And so it's just opened up so many opportunities. I know that that's something that the superintendents have done as relates to being able to go and visit other communities. But I think that that's something that I think our students should be able to have the opportunity to experience, going in and seeing other cultures as well.
It would be such a tremendous benefit, wouldn't it, just to have those experiences and see how other folks live and survive.
Yes.
And the multiplicity of languages and so forth. You're
Yes.
absolutely right.
Because I know you went on and just, I know we're not interviewing you, but just thinking in terms of, when you went on your trip and just all of the wonderful exposure and opportunities you had as a leader that you were able to bring back in your district. And just think about our students and, how that could, once again, just be an eye opener to our students, and it could lead to so many different pathways for our students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are some aspiring leaders that we have that are listening and watching. So what advice or tips would you give to folks who want to be like Dr. Young one day?
Oh my, I would say don't be like Dr. Young, be like yourself.
Okay.
Because if you're not trying to be funny, because if you're like, Dr. Young, you're going to go through the struggles that Dr. Young went through, and you may not want to go through those struggles. I've heard, someone say, in order to be like me, you have to go through what I went through. And so hopefully the goal is that, you will glean from some of the things that I'm sharing, and then, be able to just move forward within your own experiences and journey. But one thing that I will say is when I think about just aspiring leaders, one of the things that, some people may laugh about, but I will say, you don't know what you don't know. Many times you have leaders that are aspiring and they think they know everything. And I'm here to tell you, you don't. You don't know everything. And many times one of the things that I will say is you think that, you see the position and you see what the person is doing and you say, oh, that's easy, I can do that. And you really don't understand what it really entails until you walk in that leader's shoes. Excuse me. And so you really never know. So as an aspiring leader, you may aspire to the position, which is great, but don't ever take for granted to think that you have one iota of an understanding of what that leader goes through because you're not in their shoes. One of the other things that when we talk about mentors, one of the other things, I had a mentor that told me years ago. She said to me at the time, she said, "You see the bridge, you see part of the bridge." She said, "As a leader, I see the entire bridge." And for me, I've always taken that when it came down to some of the decisions and when people would begin asking questions and making statements. And I would just say, "You see your span of control. You see what you supervise. You see what you're over. You see a part of the bridge. But as the leader, I see from the beginning of the bridge to the end of the bridge. And so when I make decisions based upon understanding that there's a whole bridge and there are people on that bridge and all of the intricacies that happen. And so I don't make decision in isolation. I make decision looking at the entire bridge." Just a couple other things, what I would say to an aspiring leader: find a mentor, find people that are going to pour into you, network with other people that are like-minded people. And then I would also just say, learn, stay abreast of the latest and the best practices. One of the things that I'm always doing is I'm reading books. One of the books that I'm reading right now is The Art of Coaching. And some people may say, "Why are you reading that?" Because I'm a certified Strength Finders coach. And it's been a couple years. And for me, it's a matter of saying, what are some best practices that are out there that's going to equip me to be a better coach? And so I'm reading that book right now. I'm looking at webinars on equity, attending virtual conferences. And so for me, a part of it is just being a lifelong learner and knowing that you've never arrived when it comes down to leadership. You're always evolving. And so for me, it's being able to say to that leader that, go after your heart, go after your passion, go after your desire, but just think about some of the things that I've said, as you move forward.
There you go. So the continuous learning, being a learning leader. While you're leading, you're also learning. And
Yes,
we all
sir.
have to do that for sure. So there's a lot of conversation going on right now, Dr. Young. You know this as well as I do, about this thing called learning loss. Now, you've talked about the fact that we're doing things differently and we're thinking outside of the box. And, there's a question as to whether there's really learning loss or not. But if there is learning loss that's been taking place, how do we go about addressing that?
One of the things that I will say is it all starts with assessment. There are many students, and this is a shameless plug, but I will say one of the things that I imagine when I think about the future of education is that a student can come into a classroom, take an assessment, demonstrate mastery of that course, and automatically get credit for that course. I know that sounds real far-fetched, but for me, it's one of those things where why do we have a student sitting in a class who already knows the information when we could actually have them in a class learning and accelerating and expanding their understanding? Far-fetched, I know, because of seat hours and the need, but that's something that I would say, in a dream world, I'd love to be able to see, because many times we have so many students that are sitting in classrooms that are bored out of their mind because they know the information. So once again, my little shameless plug for the future of education. But I will say, it starts with assessment, being able to assess the student, see where they are, look to see what are the challenges that that student is facing, even within the learning gaps. And I will say, looking at, and I'll just give the example in Warren County Schools, we've had a number of students who've been successful in virtual learning. And then we've had a number of students who've not been successful because of the mode of learning. Even though we've recorded our direct instruction, we put it in folders, we make it accessible to our students. We've had, other remediation that we've added to make sure students are still learning. But even within that, we've just had some students that have not been able to remain as connected as we'd like them to have been during this virtual learning time. And so for me, it's being able to say, let's look at what the assessments are saying, let's look at the results, and then let's go ahead as a school district and create a plan of action action that's going to work to make sure that we fill the learning gaps of the students. And so while a student, for example, may have known, or maybe there may have been 10 standards that the student should have mastered, maybe the student only mastered 5 of those standards. For me, it's being able to say, there's no need to teach all 10. Let's go and focus on those 5 and fill those learning gaps to make sure that we're able to provide what the students need. And so some of the things we've already begun doing, I know in the state of North Carolina, there's a conversation about the requirement of summer school. But one of the things that I've also, spoken to my chief academic officer, and these are just strategies. One, I thought about the strategy of saying for our high school students, credit recovery, being able to ensure that those students that have failed, that they have an opportunity to redeem themselves, because for me, it's about extending grace. The other thing that I will say is thinking in terms of a student that may have had a really bad quarter. And so maybe in the past they were a B student, and now all of a sudden they received a D or an F, looking to the possibility of saying, for that one quarter, can we assign you credit recovery modules that will allow you to be able to demonstrate mastery and replace that one quarter grade that you got a D or an F in just for that quarter. Once again, thinking out of the box, thinking how can we meet the needs of students? They don't need the entire course because they may have gotten an A, B, and C. But maybe in one quarter, they may have gotten a D or F, but providing that opportunity to increase their GPA. Some of the other things that I've also, looked at is, we may have students that may not be able to come to the actual building. And so looking at opportunities where if a student has to work in the daytime, being able to look to see, could we provide evening programs for students to be able to still be able to get the credit and to be able to take the course. And then also looking at virtual learning. We have various platforms that we've purchased as a result of COVID to meet the needs of our students. The state also has many programs that we've used to meet the needs of our students. And so even looking at the option of providing a potential, a summer virtual summer remediation program for students. And so for me, it's about being able to say, what are the needs of the students? What do we need to do? And what are the ways that we need to exhaust our options? Because if they can't come into the building, what can we still do to make sure that we're reaching the student? And so for me, it's about being a champion for student and doing what it takes to make sure that we're meeting the students where they are, to provide them as many opportunities as possible to be able to demonstrate that they've learned the established standards that they've been given for that grade or course.
Outstanding. You're giving it a lot of thought, it looks like. And you're talking about me being your mentor. I'm taking notes so I'll know what to do. But we've talked a lot about that too. And, the bottom line is we do know that there are going to be some gaps. But as you said, we can't fix it with a one size fits all. We've got to find a way, as you said, to look at children and their what they know on an individual basis, and then work to try to help them get to where they need to be. Education was always about that until we got so standardized, until things have changed. So absolutely, you're right. What a wonderful experience this has been. What a wonderful, we could talk all night. I know you can, and I can listen real well all night.
No, I appreciate
but it's absolutely been my pleasure to have you here with us. And so if you'll stay with me just for 1 minute, I need to do a couple of items, and then we'll come back and kind of close things out. So our next podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be March 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. My guest will be Mr. Oliver Holly, who is the superintendent of Terrell County Schools, one of the smallest districts in the state of North Carolina. We'll learn from him the challenges of leading a rural district while maintaining excellence. And Dr. Young, again, I just want to thank you so very, very much for taking the opportunity to be a part of the Wright experience. I think the world of you. I'm proud of you and the work that you're
I'm
doing.
honored.
And that's whether or not you named me your mentor, one of your mentors or not.
I'm
And so
honored.
as you continue to go forward, we want to continue to hear about the wonderful things that you're doing and this wonderful book that's coming forth and the amazing things that you're doing. Our children need a champion, and you certainly
Yes.
are that.
Yes.
So
Thank
thank you
you.
for your time and
Thank
for
you. I
being a
made
part of this.
history. I made history.
That's right. You
Thank
did. And I
you.
appreciate that more than you know. So thank you again for being here, as I said. And I hope this podcast serves as an opportunity to motivate us all to be better. So thank you very much for watching and being a part of the Wright experience. Good evening.